If you're brand new to Magic the Gathering and you're wondering if you should purchase the Food and Fellowship Commander deck, this review is for you. This commander deck actually has two commanders, and one of those commanders is Frodo the Adventurous Hobbit. He says partner with Sam, which is the other commander that we'll go over. It says whenever Frodo Adventurous Hobbit attacks, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, the ring tempts you. Then if Frodo is your ring bearer and the ring has tempted you 2 or more times this game, you draw a card. First things first, Frodo is 2 mana to play, so every single game you play on turn 2, depending on the amount of lands or the kind of lands you have in your hand, you should be able to play Frodo. I think commanders that are generally a cheap cost are always much more beginner friendly because the deck plays, it's very straightforward. Your commander costs 2 mana. He should always be in the game on turn 2. The next commander we have Sam Loyal Attendant, which mind you costs 3 mana. So turn 2, Frodo, turn 3, Sam. Every game. You partner with Frodo. It says at the beginning of combat on your turn, you create a food token. Activated ability of foods you control costs 1 less to activate. So generally a food token is something that you can sacrifice for 2 mana generally to gain 3 life. With Sam in play, that's going to allow you to sacrifice that food for 1 mana to gain 3 life. Keep in mind the sequencing here. You're going to be creating a food prior to attacking with Frodo. So I would advise that you pay the 1 mana to sacrifice the food the moment you make it, and then attack with Frodo so the ring can tempt you. Now, the first creature we have over here is a Birds of Paradise. This is a really good reprint. This card is generally always around $5. It's a pretty strong card. It's 1 mana of Flying Bird. You can add 1 mana of any color. And in this commander deck, that's 3 colors. This is a good card. Essence Warden. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life. Another 1 mana creature. Gilded Goose. You can pay 1 mana. When it enters the battlefield, you create a food. You can then sacrifice the food to add 1 mana of any color. And because Sam creates foods, you should always be able to generate mana. And the Gilded Goose can create foods as well by itself, which is nice. We have Banquet Guests, affinity for food, trample. Banquet Guest enters the battlefield with twice X +1/+1 counters on it. You can pay 2 mana to sacrifice a food and give the Banquet Guest indestructible until the end of turn. It has trample, so you're going to be able to deal a lot of damage with this card, which is nice. This could turn into a big creature late game. I think in pre-con battles, this card could potentially win a game depending on the amount of food you have on the battlefield and the amount of mana you spent to put it into play. We have Farmer Cotton. When Farmer Cotton enters the battlefield, create X/1/1 white halfling creature tokens and X food tokens. So you could just pay any amount of mana into X so that you can create each of those tokens, which is nice. I mean, it's a cool card. I'm not gonna build that commander deck, but it's a cool card. Feasting Hobbit, Devour Food 3. So every single time he enters the battlefield, you can essentially sacrifice a food. And then, depending on the amount of food you sacrifice, he's going to get 3 +1/+1 counters. So this guy can turn into a pretty monstrous creature. It says, creatures with power less than Feasting Hobbit's power can't block it. Well, that's going to be a lot of creatures, depending on what you do. We have Golem Obsessed Stalker. He reads, at the beginning of your end step, each opponent dealt combat damage this game by a creature named Golem loses life equal to the amount of life you gain this turn. Oh, wow. So this is similar to a card called Wound Reflection. That's a game-winning card. This is a fun little commander over here. I kind of like this card. This card inside this deck has the potential to win you a lot of games. We have Pippin, Warden of Isengard. Partner with Mary, Warden of Isengard. You can pay 1 mana and tap to create a food token. And then you can tap this to sacrifice 4 foods. And then it says other creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain haste until the end of turn. I mean, depending on the deck's ability to it seems like you're putting a lot of very small creatures onto the battlefield. And I think that would just be a nice way to kind of take somebody out of the game. This card by itself, in the right situation, is a win condition. Prize Pig, 2 mana. Whenever you gain life, put that many ribbon counters on the Prize Pig. Then if there are 3 or more ribbon counters on Prize Pig, remove those counters and untap it. Dude, you could generate a lot of mana with this pig. This is a pretty decent card over here. I feel like this card's gonna be really good. This card might be a staple in life gain decks. Honestly, this is a really good card. Then we have the Prosperous Innkeeper. When it enters the battlefield, create a treasure token. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. Shire Sheriff, Vigilance. Whenever the Shire Sheriff enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice a token. When you do, exile target creature and opponent controls until this creature leaves the battlefield. For 2 mana, that's decent. That's pretty good. The low mana value of this commander deck. We have Bilbo Birthday Celebrant. If you gain 1 life, you gain that much life plus 1 instead. You can pay that much mana to tap and exile Bilbo Birthday Celebrant. Search your library for any number of creature cards, put them onto the battlefield and shuffle. Activate only if you have 111 or more life. Dude, that's a lot of life you need in order to be able to do that. But this deck's gotta be making a ton of mana. This card basically is like a life gain deck. You activate that ability, find a bunch of creatures that combo together that just wins you the game. Lobelia, Defender of Bag End. When Lobelia enters the battlefield, look at the top card of each opponent's library and exile those cards face down. You can then sacrifice an artifact to play a card exiled with Lobelia without paying its mana cost. Or you can sacrifice an artifact and each opponent will lose 2 life and you gain 2 life. Little effects like that where you're just dealing damage to people here and there can win you the game. You can activate that at instant speed. Now we have Mentor of the Meek. Obvious include here. Whenever another creature with power 2 or less enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 1. If you do, draw a card. Yeah, staple. Merry Warden of Isengard. So this is the card that you partner with Pippin. It says, when 1 or more artifacts enter the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token with lifelink. This ability triggers only once each turn. That's what I'm saying, yeah. So the Pippin was talking about creating tokens, food tokens. Mary is gonna create creature tokens, and depending on how many times you do that, you should have a force of creatures onto the battlefield that you can give +3/+3 and attack with. It's cool. Pacious Guest, Menace. When 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create a food token. Nice. Whenever you sacrifice a food, put a +1/+1 counter on the Rapacious Guest. When Rapacious Guest leaves the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to its power. Wow. This is a pretty good card. This card, like I said earlier, I mean, you're creating food tokens. When you deal combat damage to a player, you can be able to sacrifice foods to put a counter on this, and then it's just like, okay, well, you're gonna wipe the board. Well, take 10 damage because my Rapacious Guest is a 10/10, and now you lose. Rosie Cotton of South Lane. When Rosie Cotton of South Lane enters the battlefield, create a food token. Okay. Whenever you create a token, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control other than Rosie. So buffing the creatures that you have on the board while you're doing what the deck just generally wants to do. Guys, this deck right now is really well made so far. Every one of the cards that we've seen so far just synergize so well with one another. Savvy Hunter. Okay, whenever attacks or blocks you create a food, you can sacrifice 2 foods, draw a card. Yeah, we're gonna have plenty of foods, apparently. The Gaffer. At the beginning of each end step, if you've gained 3 or more life this turn, you draw a card. Yeah, your commander is gonna create a food. It's gonna help you to gain 3 life. With this in play, you're gonna draw a card. 3 mana? Come on. Tireless Provisioner. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, create a food or treasure token. Yeah, perfect. Butterbur Bree Innkeeper. At the beginning of your end step, if you don't control a food, create a food token. We're gonna have so many food that I don't think it's gonna be really difficult for you to generate food, but if you need that extra food there, it will be there with this guy. We have the Mirkwood Bats Flying. Whenever you create or sacrifice a token, each opponent loses 1 life, right? Like that taxing over time. Oh, you take 1 now, you take 1, you take 1. It seems very minimal, but those are the decks that often win games at tables. We have Treebeard Gracious Host, Trample Ward 2. Whenever Treebeard enters the battlefield, create 2 food tokens, okay? Whenever you gain life, put that many +1/+1 counters on target halfling or tree folk. Oh, wow. Put that many +1/+1 counters? Yeah, this card could just knock somebody out of the game. I'm not even gonna pronounce that word. The Greatest of the Eagles, Flying. Whenever G attacks, target attacking creature gains flying until the end of turn. At the beginning of each end step, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, create a 3/3 white bird with flying, and whenever this creature attacks, target attacking creature gains flying until the end of turn. Landroval, Horizon Witness, flying. Whenever 2 or more creatures you control attack a player, target attacking creature without flying gains flying until the end of turn. Nice. I like the inclusion of the birds. It's very flavorful. Motivated Pony, Trample, Haste. Whenever Motivated Pony attacks, attacking creatures get +1/+1 until the end of turn. If a food enters the battlefield under your control this turn, untap those creatures and they gain an additional +2/+2 until the end of turn. Nice, just really coming in hot. And the fact that this is 5 mana and it has Trample and Haste, so you can attack right away, makes the card feels like it costs less to cast because you get to use it right away. Great card. Guys, this deck is strong. Eagles of the North. When Eagles of the North enter the battlefield, creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain first strike until the end of turn. Yeah, I would probably take this card out of the deck. We have Generous Ent, enters the battlefield to create a food. Take this card out of the deck. We have a Great Oak Guardian. This has flash, so you can cast this creature on your opponent's turn. When it enters the battlefield, creatures target player controls gets +2/+2 until the end of turn. You generally use this to destroy your opponent's creatures that are attacking you. It's a good card. Orchard Strider. Yeah, take this card out of the deck. Woodfall Primus, Trample. When Woodfall Primus enters the battlefield, destroy target non-creature permanent. This has Persist. So if the Woodfall Primus would go into the graveyard, it's going to re-enter the battlefield with a -1/-1 counter, and then his ability will trigger again, and then you could just destroy something. Okay, so we have Swords to Plowshares. That's going to let you exile the creature. Keep that. Sylvan Offering. Choose an opponent. You and that player each create an XX green treefolk creature token. Choose an opponent. You and that player each create an X11 green elf warrior creature tokens. So you get to share tokens with another player on the battlefield if you want to. I mean, I would probably take that card out of the deck. Farseek, yeah, that's going to help you look for lands. We have Go for the Throat, that's going to destroy some creatures. Knight's Whisper, you can draw 2 cards and lose 2 life, and that art on that card is great. We have Revive the Shire. Return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand and you create a food token. Okay, I mean, it's going to create food for you. Anguished Unmaking, you can exile a non-land permanent. This is nice. And in a life gain deck, you don't care too much about losing 3 life there. Crypt Incursion, I have this in one of my decks. Exile all cards from target player's graveyard. You gain 3 life for each card exiled this way. Yeah, this card gains you a ton of life. It's a good card. Cultivate, yeah, that's going to put lands into play. We have Mortify, destroy target creature or enchantment. And then we have, oh, dude, we got a Toxic Deluge. No way. Guys, this is an amazing card. Yeah, as an additional cost to cast the spell, pay X life. All creatures get -X/-X until the end of turn. Guys, this deck is really good. For 3 mana, you get to destroy all the creatures on the board. In this deck, you're going to gain so much life, it doesn't even matter. Buy this deck. It's really good. Look at that. Wow. We have Harmonize. It's not showing up. Harmonize just lets you draw 3 cards for 4 mana. We have Fell the Mighty. Destroy all creatures with power greater than target creature's power. And because we have a ton of little creatures, this card's just going to one-side board wipe the board. In other words, you destroy all your opponent's creatures and then get to keep your own. It's a good card in this deck. Fumigate. Destroy all creatures. You gain 1 life for each creature destroyed this way. Cool. And then Dusk Dawn. Another one-sided board wipe because you destroy all creatures with power 3 or greater, which is essentially all of your opponent's creatures. And then Dawn you can cast to just return creatures with power 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand, which is nice. Then we have Soul Ring. Some people are asking for this card to be banned because it's so strong. We have Arcane Signet. It's good. The Hithlane Rope can't be sacrificed. You can pay 1 and tap to search library for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield, tapped, and then shuffle. Oh, the player to your right gains control of the Hithlane Rope. Okay. Pay 2 mana. Draw a card. The player to your right gain control of the rope. Okay, so you're going to ramp, but everybody's going to be ramping. You're going to draw. Everybody else will be drawing. Chromatic Lantern. Cool. Commander Sphere. Okay. Field Tested Frying Pan. When Field Tested Frying Pan enters the battlefield, Create a food token, then create a 1/1 white halfling creature token attached to field tested frying pan. Equip creature has, whenever you gain life, this creature gets +X until the end of turn, where X is the amount of life you gained. Oh man, I'm putting this in my Shabraz commander deck. This is a pretty good card, man. This is a nice equipment in this life gain deck. You can win games with this. Pristine Talisman, yep, it's good. Trading Post, yep, you're gonna be able to gain life with that too, and draw cards for sacrificing the food. Well of Lost Dreams. Basically, whenever you gain life, you can pay that much mana and then you draw that many cards. We have a Dawn of Hope. Whenever you gain life, you can pay 2. If you do, draw a card, and you can pay 4 mana to create a creature with lifelink. It's a good card. Of Herbs and Stewed Rabbit. First thing you're gonna get is put a +++ on counter and up to 1 target creature and create a food. Second thing, you're gonna draw a card and create a food. The third thing, you're gonna create a 1/1 for each food token you control. Nice. Assemble the Entmoot. Creatures you control have reach. You can then sacrifice this to create 3 tapped XX green creature tokens, where X is the amount of life you've gained this turn. Okay, so if you gain a ton of life, sack this, and then you get a bunch of creatures. Nice. Call for Unity. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent you control left the battlefield this turn, put a Unity counter on Call for Unity. Guys, this deck is so well made, man. Wow. And then Sanguine Bond, another GG card. Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. This is actually probably the best card inside the deck. The most powerful, or one of the most powerful at least, because in this deck, you're going to be gaining so much life. Bilbo even reads, you need to have 111 life for this to trigger. So they're just anticipating you're going to have a ton of life. And whenever you gain life, an opponent's going to lose that much life. I mean, that's just fantastic. You can combo this with Exquisite Blood, and now you have an infinite combo and wait to just win the game on the spot. For the lands, we have Access Tunnel, which is going to give a creature unblockable. We have some nice dual lands, Exotic Orchard, a Ghost Quarter, which is going to allow you to destroy a target land. Necroblossom Snarl, okay. Rogue's Passage is going to give a creature unblockable. Let's see if we got any cool lands over here, and nothing new. Okay. Guys, I'm gonna have to rate this a 9 out of 10. I mean, I would go as far as to say amongst all of these commander decks that this may end up being... I haven't reviewed all of the other commander decks yet, but I'm fairly confident that they're not gonna be as strong as this commander deck. This is made extremely well. It's almost like it's already upgraded. And I think because it's food, there are only so many food cards in Magic the Gathering. So they just took all of them and put them inside this deck alongside cards that just make obvious sense. And I think because it's Frodo, they want to kind of push the power level of this deck. And I appreciate that because I think it's really cool. This deck is legitimately powerful. If you're a person, you had to make a decision between all of those decks and just wanted to buy one. If you enjoy playing cards more often because the general mana value of this deck is pretty low, and if you want to be able to play a deck that's strong and is going to be able to compete without just having to attack your opponents, you're dealing damage in a way that's really difficult for your opponents to respond to, because you're dealing damage because you're just playing your own game plan, right? I'm just gaining life, and because I'm gaining life, I'm forcing you to lose life, and you can't do anything about that. So this deck is 9 out of 10, one of the best commander decks I've seen. I think it's one of the best decks of this year I've seen so far, honestly. Okay, so that's the review. If you like this video, remember you can like this video if you want to see more content like this. You can subscribe as well. All the content on this channel is designed for new players. So if you want to get better at Magic the Gathering, you can subscribe to this channel right now. And if you want to see more videos like this review, you can click the link right over here. I always say the same thing when I end these videos. Always remember, eat healthy, okay? Work out every single day, even if it's just for 5 minutes. And most importantly, you got to believe in yourself, all right? Peace out, people.